which is surprising for me, but we'll work with it. We'll work with it. Hi, everybody. Sorry for technical difficulties. So yeah, so tonight we'll be talking about we get a little bit of lights off of, thank you, Derek. Well, tonight we'll be talking about kaleidoscope of colors. So if you need a fever dream after the election cycle, this is it. So we'll be talking about kaleidoscope colors tonight. We'll be mostly talking about compact Cattleyas. So there's a little bit of confusion around that, but that's any Cattleya. We're looking for something that's in the about 8 to 9 up to about 18-inch plant size. Yes.
So I'm just moving the plant out of your way.
Oh, thank you. Size that have about, and we're looking at about all of these have about a 5 to 6 inch flower. When we're talking, and this primarily comes through the work that we're doing with Cattleya Horace Maxima. We'll tell why that is such an important player later in this talk. So just an outline, we'll go first into, everybody asks in Orchid Society, especially if you're a newer member, why do we breed orchids? Why should you get plants from a nursery that's a breeder and a nursery that is, other than buying the stuff in Trader Joe's that's cloned and other things that can there, and why that's interesting to me. Then we'll go into the important, what's the important traits we look into a Cattleya, and what makes a good Cattleya, because these plants can live forever. I mean, one of the plants we have in the greenhouse is Pressvilliana alberts, originally awarded in the Royal Horticultural Society in 1846. If you think about what Albert was around in 1846, it's Prince Albert, as in comes from Queen Victoria's collection. And it's sure that Prince version of Prince Albert. Thanks, Bill. And then we'll go into the history of Horace Maxima, and we'll go into some of the art shade Cattleya breeding that we're doing here. And this talk would not be possible without my mentor, Ron Midget, who's been doing Cattleyas for 65 years, and unfortunately would have been your speaker tonight, but unfortunately his wife is having a medical procedure this week. So I said, well, I'd be happy to sub in for my old stomping ground. So that's how you got me tonight. So we send our bests to Ron for his wife's health. So then why do we breed orchids? Well, first thing, it's bloody fun. It's, there's a lot of different reasons to do it. Some people, for like the people that are in the judges in the next room who can probably hear me and are annoyed that I'm speaking so loudly, you can do it for awards. Some people do it for the notoriety, the fame, to name an orchid after your spouse or your kid or other things. No better place to get points for Valentine's Day than name it after the spouse. No better way to get points in the some people, this is their commercial. This is how they make their livelihoods. And then we also look for, a lot of the things that are done overseas are great when it's in a little 4 or 5 inch pot. But then, they don't really think about the longevity of when it grows into this 6 or 8 inch pot. It's this big monster. A lot of us in the US that are doing a lot of things with novelty breeding are wanting you to have a plant that you can pass down to your grandkids if you want. Depending on if you have or do not have grandchildren, you decide where you're on that curve. You decide on where you're on that curve. And then, you can get unique colors and forms that no one's ever seen before. So, important traits on what we look for in the Cattleya Alliance. We look for strong, saturated color or a nice, pleasing color. You can have a nice pastel, but you don't want a muddy or wash out or clear color. You want a nice pop of color. We grow orchids because they're colorful. Then we want a self-supporting plant. You do not want a plant with a lot of coccinia in it that has a weak, big, suitable, tiny little junction that flops over, or a Laelia anceps hybrid would let's take a big flower this big to little Laelia anceps, and then the flower just goes boom, and it falls over under its own weight. You want something that, if you have to spend hours doing it, that might be great for those of you that have 1 to 5 to 10 orchids. Yeah. When you get up to certain persons in this room, not naming names in a green shirt, or myself, when you get up to the thousands range, if you're staking up every single orchid every week, there's your job. And some of us have a day job. So that doesn't work. And then you want a nice foliage. It's great to have you want a nice ratio of the foliage of the plant. It's great to have this big plant. I mean, one of the most beautiful plants there's a Cypripedium, a Pathopetalum related hybrid. It's actually a little blue, a slipper orchid. And you think, oh, blue slipper orchid's great. where the plant gets about 8 feet wide, the flower spike is about 15 foot in the air and has 200 flowers, but they're 1 inch big. So you're looking at 15 feet and 1 inch flower that's blue. And then of course, you know, most of us, all of us live here in the state of California. If you haven't checked your rent or your mortgage bill lately, that's not cheap. And so space consideration is important. So you want something that is fairly compact, that isn't lanky. You know, in Cattleyas, you'll hear me talk about internodal distance. So that's the distance between, Bill, can I use your plant as an example? So if we look on Bill's plant here, the internodal distance would be the difference between each of these growths. So this is one internodal distance here, that's about 1 inch. If you think about something like a Brassivola hybrid, something with a lot of Nodoso hybrid, you want that has sort of thing, but you know, some of the Cattleyas can get very lanky, and then of course, you want to have a pot where it grows in. You don't want to overpot a Cattleya for more than 2 years worth of growth. You want to repot it every 2 years. Really? I wasn't using him as the baseline for that one. I wasn't using him for the baseline of that one. So then, but if you want something that scrolls across the pot, then you have to put it in a bigger pot, which you then, if it takes time to grow into that and it doesn't have enough roots, you worry about soppiness. You want something with a nice, compact growth habit to be able to put that flowers up. So that's what we're looking for. So Cattleya Horace Maxima. Why is that important? Well, the plant was first registered in 1846. The first awarded one was in Australia, Trains. It's a beautiful big lavender. And it was originally registered in 1948. Then they did Maxima. Maxima's gear trait is the flowers have a beautiful presentation. 4 flowers, 4 to 5 flowers around, normally puts them in a nice cascade with a nice round full of flowers. Number one thing with the second biggest thing with Horace is stems. This thing has a stem like a billy club. It can stick up erect all day. So it is great for flower habit. Form, it's beautiful form. As we'll talk later, it was the backbone for almost from the post-war era all the way into the 70s. Almost every single lavender Cattleya had Horace in it because it was dominant for getting that beautiful big flat form. It's a strong grower. I mean, Cattleya Horace, I have abused some of them in the past, and they're strong growers. They can grow back from back bulb to flowering in 1 lead in 1 year. They're a vigorous plant because they're essentially very close. They're only 3 generations removed from a species, and their half species on one side is Trianid. So it's a very primary cross, but it's got that hybrid vigor. Species are great, but when you start mixing species together, you get what is called hybrid vigor. Because you get the mixing of the traits. You mix a cool with a warm, you can go anywhere. You get a fall and a spring. Now you can get blooming in the winter and the summer. So this is what species are great, but hybrids really start to give you different forms, different things, and good amount of vigor. But there is some drawbacks to Horace. Plant gets big. The big plant that we have is in a 12-inch bulb pan, and Mr. Jacobson, if you can hear me, has an even bigger piece in a 14-inch bulb pan that is beautiful and flowering, but it is 14-inch bulb pan. It is fully mature, can put up 5 flowers a year, but it is about 2.5, 3 feet tall, not a small boy. And it is a little lanky in the internodal distance. But we can fix that. I'll tell you how later. So, more history of it. As I said, Triani, 1/2 species. Orchids, that only has that is Triani by another hybrid which has Warwickii and Delwiana in it. So that's a little bit of Delwiana. And then Horace was first come to the States in California, in Malibu, of all things, in the 1940s. It was first given an HCC in 1963, then awarded an AM in 66, and then Ron got its last AM of 88 points in 2008. Though the judges were a little bit curmudgeonly that night, gave it 88 points because there was flower damage onto the flowers, but there was 4 flowers, technically by the rule book section there, and we're still bitter that we didn't get the FCC. We're still bitter. We're still bitter. We're still bitter. And then the first hybrid was back to Triani in the 1950s. And then throughout the 1950s until 1982, it was the backbone of all the lavenders. Malibu Gem, Tortilla, all these ones, Irene Finney, they all have Horace in the background. And then Horace started to fade in its popularity as a parent. Because they said, well, we've done all the lavenders, and the lavenders are going out of styles. At the time, if you were around that time, I was not. You may have remembered that may have been your corsage flower, something similar on your prom night. Because that was the Cattleyas, but the prom flower industry was starting to shift because the whole history of what is the pot plant of orchid. When people say orchid, if you ask someone that was around in the 1930s, 1920s, they would have told you it's cymbidium. Then it was a Cattleya, then it's a phale. If you've noticed about that trend, its flower substance is going down, lighter and lighter flowers, because women's dresses, they like the young ladies like to have a little bit of sheer fabric for attracting other persons. And so that there, but if you start to put a big heavy cymbidium, you get this, it doesn't work. So it starts to be a little bit there, and so we've trended towards a smaller flower. And so when people say the orchid of today, that's pretty much because the corsage and the cut flower industry have switched to Phalaenopsis, but it has changed over time. So, but then, 1982, John Hayes has a crazy idea. Why don't you put this lavender on a yellow? And what you going to get? Now, the convention is in the Cattleya color dominance hierarchy, which we won't go into. That's a whole nother talk, which is way more technical. But lavender outranks yellow. So it should have come out lavender. Maybe flame purple. There is a different time where if you put because of plasmid genetics, if you put a lavender and the yellow as a seed parent, you should they were hoping for like a royal flame purple. And they did it to Cattleya Fortune, which was a famous yellow, but it had bad forms. They wanted to fix it. And they got Boldens out. And they bloomed out the first two. They got a yellow with a red lip. And then they bloomed out the second one. And then they got Passion. And they have this beautiful fuchsia colored flower. And the old man at Stewart's, and old man Stewart and us and Carson and Nurse Hetherington were like, well, what the heck is that? Because that shouldn't come out of the color. And so they then started thinking. Then they got to golden sapphire, yellow spawn, they got more out of this cross. There's something here. The first cultivar, and it got yellow sapphire as an AM. So then they took Horace to a semi-alba. Took it to Stephen Oliver Foraker, a famous semi-alba meaning white with purple lip, and they got Melody Fair. And they got half that were lavender, half that were, and 25% were roughly semi-alba. Semi-alba is a recessive trait of the lavender genes, which means that there must be a semi-alba mutation in Horace. Then they started thinking, because that's the only way it can happen. And they figured out it was 25%. So when we found out from that was, another thing here, here we choose Malibu Treasure. Again, this is Horace onto another semi-alba, registered there. So then we started to think about, well, we know that Horace is probably a tetraploid. So tetraploid means it has 4 copies of the genome. You are a diploid, you're a human, you have a diploid. Some plants, actually back in the Triassic age, actually chromosome doubled as a way to survive. They actually found that that's one of the things that made orchids survive, the Paleogene extinction event, is their ability to chromosome double. And a lot of the other plant genera did that as a way to be more robust and more resilient and more resistant to change. But other things, there was a putrid mutation, and we said, well, to get this semi-alba, we must have multiple copies. Well, we don't have a Horace Maxima as a lavender, so it can't be more, it has to have more, it has to have at least 2, it has to have more dominance than recessive. So it comes out recessive that we have the lavender, and then throughout multiple breedings, we found that it was a tetraploid with 3 copies of the lavender gene and 1 copy of the semi-alba. And when that semi-alba gene in that 25% range mixes with the yellows, but then you also still have some other parts of the gene that may have the lavender gene, then we can start to toil, ball, and dribble and get some interesting colors, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So when Horace is bred to a yellow, preferably as a pod parent, because it needs that plasmid yellow gene, If you breed it to a strong yellow, you can get really good color. And what we're going to talk about today is mainly what Ron and I are breeding is only for the color and the form, but we're trying to figure out that ratio of how many lavenders do you get out of a cross, how many yellows do you get out of a cross, and more interesting, how many of the art shades you get. So this is the color range you can get out of all F1 Horace hybrids. You can get beautiful blends of peaches and colors and other fuchsias. You can get beautiful yellows and even concolor yellows. Concolor meaning the whole flower is one color. You can get lavenders to pinks. You can get apricots and oranges. You can get pinks, and you can even get cream. All out of the same cross. Now, that's an important thing for us. I know the standard by certain people in the industry who shall not be named have been breeding for consistency that all the cross looks the same. This shows you that, if you buy something with Horace, you don't know what the color range is going to be. But I don't know about you. Maybe some people can debate, but I'd like to have any of those plants in my collection. And so, buy a couple. If you get a pink, you get a lavender, get a red, yeah, they're all the same. They're all siblings, but to you, they're all three different beautiful colored flowers. That shows the beauty of what you can get at high variability crosses. And if you get one that's a color you don't like, put it on the opportunity table or do it at member plant sales at the next show and get another cross. It works. And Horace is so dominant and such a good breeder that it allows for good substance. So let's now talk about some of the crosses. Here are some of the crosses. This is not even the full list of what we have done with Horace breeding. And there's about 40 more crosses in development with Horace as an F1 and other ones with Horace as a parent. Yes, Bill, I'm up to about 180 crosses right now. I'm up to about 100. They've grown.
How many in a flask?
How many flasks?
No, how many plants in a flask?
20 plants per flask.
And how many flasks do you get?
5 flasks per cross.
So you got 100?
I have 45,000 plants in development in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
I hope your new space is a lot bigger than your old space.
Yeah. Support your local nursery. Support your local nursery. So then we'll talk about there. This is Maxima's effect. So we have Horace onto Orange Butter Melinda. This is Buttercup by Orange Nugget, beautiful concolor yellow, and you get Maxima's effect. This is some of our awarded cultivars. We have Apricot, Pale Moon, which is a cream, Golden Girl, my favorite, Aries, which is a nice peach, and Melinda, which I have another Melinda there. It was named for John Sanders' wife was Melinda. Again, name notoriety, named for your wife for Valentine's Day, gets points. So there, and so this is the first one that we got, and this had 4 AOS awards out of a cross. That is pretty good. The AOS sees thousands of plants per year. Most crosses only maybe get 1 cross, and you got to bloom out of 4 of them. We bloomed out 50 from this cross, got 4 awards. That's a pretty good batting average. And we'll talk about a lot of these have really high awards because Horace is really dominant. If you breed it to the right things, you get really interesting results.
Do you have the Pale Moon here?
No,
Bummer.
no, Pale Moon doesn't leave the greenhouse. Nor does Golden Girl. Nor does Golden Girl. So then we took Merci beaucoup. This is Seagull's Apricot. So this is a red by Horace. Not as much color range when you use the red, but you do get, again, some of these, this sunset pattern down here. You get some nice red lip with pinks, and you even get some really nice peaches. We'll talk about even crosses that came out of Seagull's Apricot's children and going back to Horace, which will be very interesting in the later part of this talk. So then we did similar things. Daniel Day Deaver. Jim Naku is Fortune. Zendet, which is one of the parents of Fortune. So that's one of the parents of Golden Zell. So again, an analog. On to Buford, a miniature plant. Jim Naku only gets about this tall, 3 to 4 flowers, blooms once a year, beautiful plant. Ford Fortune is Fortune onto Fortune, and that made John Passander. And now we start to get other crosses. So Daniel Day Deaver, Grace Stam. And feel free, please ask questions during the talk. I will go through this fast, and if you don't ask questions, I will speed up. But so please do ask questions for your enjoyment. So, Gray Standard. Then we have Sue's Heart, this beautiful watermelon. This is one of my top 5 in the greenhouse. And then we have Pilgrim. Ron lost that plant when he moved from New Jersey. He cries every time I ask him about it. He cries every time I talk about it. So there, and these are just more of the same. And then we have Spring Moon, a beautiful pink. And I even have Melinda, one of the other ones on the for sale table for tonight. You can own a piece of this history. And then John Passander, we have, I don't know why this thing here, we have beautiful reds coming out of this cross. This is Goldilocks. This is the beautiful yellow, that's there.
Mitch,
Shingetsu, yes.
are these the big, Cattleyas, or are they gonna be the small?
These are not compact, because you need to choose a small plant. Horace is not dominant for size.
Okay.
So if you breed Horace to a small mini cat thing, what you get is what we would consider a compact. Now, people like SBO will say compacts are about 6 to 8 inches. That's still technically a miniature. So and again, breeding a compact to compact doesn't really defeat it. A lot of the miniature species are cooler, wetter growers, higher elevation. They're pains in the butts to grow. Coccinia is a pain. Walkeriana's complainy. Other ones, their Puma, other things are not the easiest thing to grow. But the standards are great, but they take space. You make a compact now, if you get the good ratio, the standard's going to give you a big, vigorous, thick, healthy root system. The miniature is going to shrink the size of the plant. So now what do you have? You have a small plant with a vigorous root system, which means you can abuse the crap out of it. So now it has more of a resistance, because mini cats have normally thin little leaves. You break it, you flick it off, you break it off, you're done. If you get too wet, those roots will rot, they're done. Well, now you've got a big plant with a big healthy root system and a vigorous growing. And the standards are normally warmer growing. The mini cats are normally cooler growing. All of these plants in the last year, as some of you have known my life history, I was growing here and I ended in Half Moon Bay in April. In January of this year, it got down to 31 in my greenhouse and they have still no damage. In Encinitas last month, it got to 120 outside my greenhouse. I didn't check what the inside temperature was because I didn't want to pay a visit to the cardiologist. So if it was 120 outside my greenhouse, normally 30 degrees more, it probably got over to 150. And we still have no heat damage, we have no lost leaves. The flowers were going, come on, I'm not doing this. They were gone in about a week. The flowers didn't last as long, but no damage to the plant, they'll bloom again. They'll be back. So this is what you do with a nice compact. And now you're getting, and those mini cats normally have 2 to 3 flowers per inflorescence. Horace has 4, can put up as high as 5 or 6 when it's really happy. And so now you're getting a plant where a lot of these, all of these normally when they were getting awarded because of the AOS, if you put 4 or 5 flowers on an inflorescence, they kind of can crowd themselves and they'll get a little pushed up against each other. So normally these are awards. If you look up the awards, they say 2 to 3, but that was 2 to 3 when we gave them enough distance to spread out and fully open and go, Shoei, I'm here. But then if not, but when they actually are grown in the greenhouse and we breed with them, often they can have 5+ flowers on an inflorescence. So now you're getting something like, a mini cat. Not a lot of coccinia, you still got that beautiful reddish color on a plant that you won't kill because yes, we are in San Francisco, coccinia used to be favored around here. Rod McClellan down in South San Francisco did a bunch of that. But if you haven't heard, the summer's been hot because global warming's not the easiest thing, getting worse, and we're getting higher temperature fluctuations and our winters are getting colder and wetter and our summers are getting hotter and drier. So now if you start mixing these things, now you've got a plant that can take more of those conditions. Again, 31, 120, 1 year, they still live. They live. So this is Shingetsu, this is the AM, this is the beautiful peach colored one. And paleface. Beautiful little thing. Salmon, named for its beautiful salmon color. A fantastic parent for us as well. And then we get to Bonnie Petrie, Heritage Spirit, which is a beautiful red orange by Maxima. You've got a beautiful chartreusey yellow, fails, and all of these other ones came out here. This is actually named for Ron's granddaughter who said she wanted a big yellow cross and so he named it because the first one that came out was this beautiful bright yellow that was con color. It was the only one that came out yellow of the entire cross. So her yellow cross that she wanted as her namesake was not yellow, and all the ones we bred from that cross are not yellow. So unfortunately, you can't always go by first impressions. And then as we take Taiwan Yellow Ball, this is Edgar Foster Daniels. Taiwan Yellow Ball was a famous cross. It was one of the most important that came out of Taiwan recently, H&T. It's a beautiful saturated golden yellow. Again, you want Horace to have that saturated yellows. And what you get out of it is these. These are almost always in bloom for Christmas. These are our favorite Christmas gift of all. We have Falstaff, which is the big one up in the corner. A lot of the other ones, Michaela Blood, which is another orange. And again, orange is kind of hard in Cattleya. You can kind of have a burnt orange, but like a true, nice, bright, orange. It kind of, orange fruit colored orange. Not the easiest thing in these big cats. And now we're trying to go and now what we're trying to do is in the F2s, breeding on with these now that we have all these color lines. Once these colors are bred, the flowers, it has the flower genes for its color. Even though it may have come from a yellow, it may have had pink siblings. If it's a peach, it's going to breed peach. So now this is really interesting as we continue into the F2s, the next generation. Now we can take the peach from the cross and go in one direction, and we can go to the pink and go in another. And we can take the salmon and go that way. And now we're starting to get there. And Ron got close to retirement and went off the deep end and I said, you could do your bucket list. That got to 150. So that became a thing. And again, more Edgar Foster Daniels is, again, all great form, all compact plants. These plants don't get bigger than about 12 inches tall. And something like Falstaff, when it bloomed last year, I measured it at 6.5 inches. 3 flowers, 6.5 inches on a 12-inch plant. And they're another thing the Horace hybrids have is they also are really nice for fragrance. So you have really nice fragrance, 3 flowers there blooming on your Christmas table. I don't know what more you can ask for.
What size pot?
6.5-inch plot. So we got flowers as big as the pot, 3 of them on a 12-inch parent. And that plant that division itself was 3 months earlier, I saw 3 pseudobulbs growing off the side of the pod. And I'm going, well, I could repot you, but you have a beautiful growth right in the center where I don't want to repot you. Chop, pot, bark. 3 months later, 3 flowers fully growing. And it's like, and didn't even take, and again, the robustness of it was just putting out new roots on the new growth. I said, okay, the flowers may be deformed. I was totally expecting the flowers to burst, the buds to burst, because you're repotting it when it's deep in sheath. I didn't think anything of it, and it put on a blooming. And I would have taken it in for judging and should have gotten an award on it, but a little sluggy decided he was going to get me that year, and it ate a slug. So I went godfather on the slugs, and there was no slugs in Half Moon Bay for that week. I put more slug bait than should be allowed by human nature kind. So that happened. You can mess with my friends, you can mess with my family, you mess with my plants. You're done. So this is Edgar Foster Daniels. Then we got Haiwan Gold. This is the famous gold this is the parent of Taiwan Yellow Ball. Again, a famous yellow that's come out of Taiwan, a great plant, but what's the major weakness? It's kind of a starry formed flower. It's kind of got those little knots there. Well, if you take that to Alnova Extreme, you get this. Get some pales, some pinks, some nice yellows, everything out of this cross. And now what you're starting to see though is, what does someone think the ratio is? The ratio of pinks to yellows to the albas. Yeah, there's about 50% that come out pink to lavender, 33% that are now coming out about yellow, and 12.5% that are coming out every color of the rainbow. This is what we're starting to get. But that makes sense with the genes that you have. You have one copy of semi-alba, so that's 25%. Breed it to a yellow, that means you have to have the yellow on the other side, so divide that by 2, 12. 25 divided by 2 is 12.5. Now, I know, most of the country still can't do it. I'm a physics and EE major. You might, you're glad I didn't do what I did to the AOS judges 2 years ago, and they made me do a statistic talk on Tracy and I gave them a statistics lecture in there and started to do standard deviations. I still out standard deviations. Yeah, I did that. So, yeah, and so this is Al Novak's dream. And now, as I said, we get into the F2. So now we're trying to take the lavenders we don't do as much with because there's other lavenders we could use. Yes, Bill.
Explain what an F2 is.
An F2 is a second generation. So an F1 is you and your partner have a kid. Your kid is your F1. Your grandkids are your F2s. Your great grandkids are your F3. If you're up to an F4, I'm sorry. If you're up to an F4, we're sorry. There. So now we're starting to take these. So now Santa Fe Brilliant, Sue's Heart, that beautiful watermelon that I showed you. Canoa Beach is a beautiful peach color. So you breed that, you get Santa Fe Brilliant, which is this beautiful rose colored flower. Then you take Sue's Heart to Helen Velez, that's a nice yellow. You get Nancy's Heart, which is this beautiful peach. And if you see that flower kind of looks white on there, it actually is the camera not picking up the wavelength because it's almost ultraviolet with that splash. It's actually the camera not being able to pick up those wavelengths. If you see that plant in person, it almost looks ultraviolet.
So Mitch, are these plants 50% Horace?
These would be 25% Horace. Yes. Horace is one of the grandparents, right? And then we get into things like drumbeat, which is a lavender splash petal. Splash petal meaning that has a pour, so another like a splash of paint on the petals. That's the best way I can describe it. On to Circle of Light, the famous pinky red cross gave you Fordyce's finale, which is this, which does not, the photo does not give it justice. This is one of the most beautiful flame bright purples ever. It is again one of my top 5s. We're using there. Circle of Life onto John Cassandra Goldilocks. You get the yellows. Now you're getting these beautiful bright pinks.
Can you tell us what caloric is?
Caloric means that it has a genetic mutation. So all orchids have 6 petals. They have 3 sepals. So, oh, no, come on. No. 1, 2, 3 sepals. And then all orchid, the taxonomic or botanical description of an orchid, all orchids have what we call a lip, where one of the 3 petals have gone through a mutation millions of years ago. Even orchids are about, the oldest known tribe of orchids is about 78 million years old. They mutated to have what is called a lip. And then somewhere over those millions of years, they get a second mutation, which turns the petals into another lip. It has a second mutation where those petals now try to become 3 lips.
But they're not fertile.
They are fertile. Cattleyas?
No, the 3 lips.
No, it's the column where all the sex.
It's possible. I'm just saying. Okay.
No, it's not Cymbidium. If florets were not fertile, Fred Clark's splash and petals would never exist.
Okay.
So, so they are not like Cymbidium florets that are infertile. Cattleya florets, very fertile. Some of them actually more fertile than their non-floric siblings. And so, and then when you breed that floricism to something that isn't there, you'll get normally about 25%. They come out and that floricism on a non-floric flower, it won't be a lipped form, it'll just take that lipped color. So if you see here, this has this darker red or this yellow, will now be splashed, like you take a swab of paint across it. And that's what we're doing with these. Excuse me, I'm gonna get a drink of water. Apologies, I'm just going and going there. Thank you. So again, and the other important thing of this cross is, if any of you know Circle of Life, the famous cross by Frank Fordyce, one of the major things, as certain individuals say, they like to grow like begonias because they have weak ovaries and weak stems, and they go to whoop, and it's a beautiful flower, but you gotta go, oh, that looks good to see it properly. But now with Horace and that, billy club of a stem, they go, yay! And now you have a little flower that stands up and looks at you proud and goes, I look pretty. And that's what we want, don't we, as an orchid? So those are there, and now we're getting in. Now this is the favorite F2. This is apricot sand. So this is now that Seagull's apricot glorious, that beautiful red, onto John Passander, which gave you which was the yellow form of that, and now we got beautiful brilliant reds coming out of this, and even some yellows. See that brighter orange flare here? That's what we would call a splash petal. And another splash petal here, and even some concolor yellows. And then we take that to Circle of Life, and now we're in the F3s. This is apricot circle. This is the cross we've been blooming out this year. And you can tell the colors on this are almost saturating the camera of the projector. And we're getting some beautiful colors, and even some beautiful color ranges. We're getting beautiful reds. We're getting some beautiful, the center one is more of a cherry. We're getting some nice flares. I'd like to see that one bloom out again this year to see if the flare holds on the other half. We're even getting some beautiful peaches, and this is not really easy to see on this projector, but this one was more of a peachy apricot, and we got some other ones there. So we're really starting to get some interesting colors, some nice solar flares on the top.
Sorry, Mitch, how big
Yeah.
are the plants? How big are the flowers?
4.5 inches. That's Circle of Life, with Circle of Half is about 3.5. So these are now getting them, and now, Fred Clark at SBO has been trying for years to get a Circle of Life hybrid that isn't droopy. These plants are upright, 2 to 3 flowers on inflorescence. We're blooming out all of them again this year, and they're now on their second blooming. They're getting 2 to 3 flowers on multiple leaves. So we're now getting 4 or 5 flowers open on one plant at a time. These are fully mature. They're no bigger than 8 inches tall in a 4-inch pot. We now got 5 flowers in a 4-inch pot, 4.5 inches big. I don't really know much more of what we could ask for on beautiful reds. Yes, in the back.
What's happened to the red one?
Oh, well, of course, the red line and the coccineae don't ever have fragrance. If the red line, most of the red, if you have a red Cattleya, red is pollinated by insectivores that pollinate by looks. So most red orchids are not fragrant. Most of the other fragrance ones, the lavenders and a lot of the other things, are actually fragrant, because what you're seeing is not the full color that actually the insect sees, because a lot of them are actually colorful into the wavelengths that our eyes cannot pick up. So they have a fragrance also to attract their pollinators. So the red Cattleyas all come from coccinea. Coccinea doesn't have a scent, and it washes it out. But thank you, interesting question. And we're also getting to 1906, so that's taking their thing to apricot sands, and we also have didn't put it in the slide, but I also have I'll hold it up here to the camera. We're taking apricot sands outstanding, which is the yellow cultivar. We drossed it back to orange butter melinda, that yellow that you saw in the first that made Maxima's effect, and now we're getting this beautiful bright yellow. Can't see it very well, sorry. Well, look it up there. This is a 4.5 inch yellow. It looks a lot like the famous Buford Hartford elmwood, but Hartford elmwood is nearly impossible to grow. Everyone kills the plant. There's only about 7 people I know that can actually grow it well. And I had the people from SBO said, well, where's the Buford? I said, not got any Buford in it, 7 generations back. And it's not got 1 shot, 7 generations back. And they said, you should call that plant Not So Buford. So I got this one, and I called it Not So Buford. Not So Buford. Not So Buford. And so now we've got, and again, there's been other breeding with it. A lot of people have done well with Horace, and here's some other crosses that you may think are interesting, and the list is ever growing. So and that is the end. So again, I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We had a question in the back? On the what?
In the chat.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And
How do I access the chat on here?
Open Zoom.
Oh, Zoom, there we go.
Yeah, stop
Yes,
sharing.
I'm a beginner interested in how to grow culture of Cattleyas. Breeding is to advance for me. Okay, yes. So for growing Cattleyas, now the problem is that the easiest way I can tell you how to grow a Cattleya is by using the old nomenclature, but now taxonomists are trying to get more grant money to pay their bills. They've lumped everything together. And so the easiest way is, you know, if it's got a tag that says B, anything with a B that isn't a thin leaf, if the leaf is very near, then that has a lot of nodosa, that likes to be hot and dry. If it has anything with a B that comes from Digbyana, that's going to be a hot, dry, bigger plant, water every 3 to 5 days. If it's got a POT on the tag, whoever answered this in the chat, that's a Fultonar, that's going to be more of a mini cat, that's going to be wetter and cooler. SLC, the more S that it has in it, that is a Sophronitis. Those are cool, high elevation things. That would be Sophronitis coccinea, is where that S comes in, excuse me, for that. So again, how do you grow them? It's really, I water all my Cattleyas every 3 to 5 days in the greenhouse, fertilize with CalMag, the way they treat our water in California. They take the magnesium out. Biggest thing I always say is buy CalMag fertilizer, because the center atom of chlorophyll is magnesium. And calcium is, and there's a lot of hydrocarbons, but it's magnesium, more calciums in the corners. So if you don't have calcium, you don't have magnesium, they don't make chlorophyll. They don't make chlorophyll, they can't photosynthesize. They don't photosynthesize, they don't make sugar. They don't make sugar, they dead. Or they don't grow. They will grow some, but there. So you do need to put calcium, magnesium into your water. That's it. That's all I can say without knowing more about a specific plant. Thank you for that question. Anyone else have any questions in the chat?
what ratio?
CalMag, I do I do a concentrate in my fertilizer injector, but if you're not doing there, I use 1 teaspoon per 10 gallons. So yes, if you buy an 8-ounce container of it, it will outlive you. It will outlive you. And so, but the only thing is, if you watch the CalMag, is extremely hydrophilic, which it absorbs water. So do get a dry box or some form of vacuum sealable container, because it will then in about 3 months become a blue sludge. Yeah.
But calcium, magnesium, you're adding it if you're on Hetchetchi. If you're on well water, it may not be a necessity. Because it may already be there.
Yes.
So,
And if you're in SoCal like I am, buy an RO system. Because that's California river water, that's mud water.
Yeah.
That's mud water. That's mud water. Yeah.
You give your plants too much calcium and magnesium.
Not in the calcium and magnesium. You do want to watch for, unless you go crazy.
Yeah.
That's not the one you worry about, but a lot of the calcium and magnesium fertilizers also come with like a 5-15-5 nitrate, and you do have to watch the nitrates to make sure you don't get the little brown tips, which are nitrate burns. So yes, so any other questions from the audience? I won't bite. I used to be here, yeah. Well, I have some things to tell, a lot of things, of course, in the background today. Feel free to have any questions, and I also provided the opportunity table.
Go over your opportunity table.
Yeah, so my opportunity table, of course, since I used to grow here, I bought things you can grow. So that's always helpful. I bought some Maximalias, which can grow outside here in San Francisco. They like our cloud forest conditions. I bought a lot of my mini cats, including that 1904, that beautiful yellow you can see over there. I bought some interesting crosses for those of you that like some species. I brought Pumala by Alaora, which is a beautiful tiny little pink thing. Got some interesting art shade Cattleyas as well, including a 1907, one of the crosses I showed. Some other art shade things, a jeweler's art cross. And the 2 plants that are, in my opinion, the best I bought a piece of Everything Nice Showtime. That is a classic Stewart's clone that was cloned, odd 50 years ago that not as many people have anymore. And it is in cheap. So an interesting thing. And this is for my breeding collection, one of the plants I've been using. This is though the flower is a little beat up right now. This is Charles Winston Tropical Storm. When I got it, when I bloomed it last year before I divided it, it had 10 flowers on one inflorescence, and it is half mini cat. So that is a mini cat that has a 3.5, 4-inch flower on 10 flowers on one inflorescence. This is the backball piece. Backball, another piece of education, is a lot of times in a Cattleya, say the back of the plant, they have extra live eyes. Eyes are where the stem cells come from. And not every plant is worth saving the backballs, but some of them are, and they will germinate and hold the plant. This is put up 1 flower there, the big front leaf, put up 5 flowers this year, and when it gets 10 next year, I'll be taking it in.
They might be gone by now.
They might be gone. But nevertheless, these are some interesting plants that I thought I would there, and I've got a lot of interesting plants to sell, a lot of Jones Center Melinda, a lot of the crosses here, some Neovenesians, other things, and I even bought a famous piece of a famous plant, Dubiosa scullies, which was a famous plant years ago. Yes.
Mitch, can you repeat the ratio for the people online?
The ratio of calcium, 1 tablespoon per 10 gallons of water.
Talking about a dry, right?
Yeah, granular. Yeah, yes, question in the back. Again, that depends, as I said, on the type of Cattleya. The compacts, if they have a good amount of there, 4,000 to 5,000 foot candles. A big standard is 5 to even up to 8,000 foot candles, to give you an indication of what a foot candle is, because nobody knows what that is, because the British used to be old and make up units after themselves. If you stand out in an open area at about noon sun in the summertime. Now we're a little bit lower, but if you stand at about noon sun, if you look up at the sun, stand out field at noon, that's 12,000. So when I say they need 5 to 7,000, that's about half noon sun. That's the best way you can think about it.
Right on my hours.
That's throughout all the day. I normally would put, I would normally get them in a place that can get full sun, and I would put about 50% shade cloth, which is easy to find at any hardware store for 30, 40 bucks.
I get so confused, so now I have a farm meter.
I don't know the conversion on that one, my apologies.
Park meter, it would be 450, right? It's because it's teaching me the decimal place.
Yeah.
I believe it's 150.
450, okay.
Yeah.
It's very highlight.
Very, very highlight, but we can get it here, you know, we actually get a lot more in the summertime, so yeah. Yeah.
And then you're talking about having your plants in a range from 31 to over 100, and they're okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay is a moderate thing. They don't want to sit there constantly. For a Cattleya, their metabolic range, so the point at which they will turn their metabolic rate on and absorb water and turn that into sugar and grow, is about 45 minimum to about 85 max Fahrenheit. They can get a little bit colder than that for a few hours, but you want to make sure that they get up and hot in the day. When it got down to 31 in Half Moon Bay, I will say, I will preface it with, it was in a greenhouse, and I closed all the vents to certain people's dismay, and it did get normally into about 80, 85 at day max, so that they were only reaching that, they hit it, and then they immediately came back up. Same thing with the heat. They can take the heat, but if you're roasting them, they are going to die. They do not like, the orchids are not barbecue. You cannot serve them with coleslaw. You cannot serve them with coleslaw. So yeah, so this is where so realistically, if you're looking at something in your house, 45 min, I really would like to keep most Cattleyas above 50, max 85, 90 is really what looking for, which is much better than, people, I remember at many shows say, well, an orchid, they normally think of a fail. Well, the beauty of Cattleyas are really nice because they grow in South America, they can have a lot of things. Fails, they don't like below 50-55, and they don't like above 80, because they're tropical. They don't like anything there, which is also why the other dismember of just add ice to your fail. These are orchids that grow in the Philippines and Malaysia and Thailand. What do none of those countries have? Ice. Ice. None of those countries have ice. So yes, as one of the persons there, he was a Midwesterner, and I asked my mentor, I said, why doesn't that person ever come to orchid meetings? And he goes, I don't think he'd last long. And that was a Buddhist saying that. That was a Buddhist. That was the Buddhist. So yes.
So, what would be the optimum conditions you want to have to really encourage the flowering?
You would want to have, again, about 5,000 to 7,000 foot candles. Also, most Cattleyas, especially especially things with a lot of coccinia in it, they do need about a 40-degree temperature variation from day to night to induce flowering temperatures. One of the plus sides of when they got that cold is they were unhappy, and then a week later they said, oh, we had big temperature range. Everybody bloom. Everybody bloom. And my Christmas was amazing. My stress level was not. So that is another thing. So they do need temperature variation. So you do want to let them get colder at night, not too cold, but again, think about the seasons of Brazil that they go down. They do get hot in the day, but then, the forest cover with all that lack of diffuse light on the side of the trees, they're getting colder at night, so they didn't have the introducing of the blooming. So that's what they really need. And again, a Cattleya is something, you can get something like some of the bifoliates, like Schilfildiana, which are, grows on the beaches in Brazil, all the way to Coccinia, which grows in the foothills of the mountains. So when we say Cattleya, again, this is why I hate taxonomists right now, is, when you say a Cattleya, I need to know what species are in it, because it's a big tribe with a lot of variation. So know what type is in there, which is, again, the best way to look that up is there's a lot of places online, the Orchid Web, everything like that. Of course, if you want to go to the source, our record is held by the Royal Horticultural Society. They also own my bank account. They also own my bank account for registering crosses because it's $18.50 a pop. At 150 crosses, my bank account hurts. But other things like that, you can look them all up, and that's a free resource for anyone to access in the public domain.
And also trying to show the hill. Let me do the online stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I don't like hurricane. Yeah. And then that's what they have to do, but it's not the wrong dirt there. And whether it's the cloud. Yeah, it's not that far. It's other things that are sky there. Why would I read a couple of that? Actually, but.
Okay, we have Phalaenopsis jubal lady from Judy Zoo. Is Judy here? I don't know who Judy is, and she always submits stuff.
She always had beautiful flowers.
Yeah, so I guess she's not in the room. Is she online? It doesn't matter. Okay. Who are these from? Oh, Jan Anderson shows us Cattleya walkeriana cross and BLC Malworth Orchid Glade, which got an FCC from the ALS. And also from Jan is Cattleya guttata, variety Cerulean, and the a picture of the whole plant and then a close-up of the flowers. And here's Cattleya Tutankhamen Pop by Cattleya Chocoberry Best. There's a nice magenta color, and the LC Angel Heart Hihi Manu, a lavender. And here's Cattleya Sir Jeremiah Coleman Blue Moon, which is named for the founder of Coleman's Mustard. And here's Jan's Vanda Cerulean. And Cattleya Decori Rex. There's Benante Johnson's RLC Heaven's Gate Cristal, which got an FCC from the AOS for its gorgeous color. I was in China a couple of weeks ago and I took some photographs of plants in situ. This is Heavenaria dentata, which you could see is growing all up the hillside there. And Yunnan has a temperature range pretty much like we do. I think it gets a little warmer for a little longer than we have. Here's Paphiopedilum gratrixianum in situ. Again, that's a path that I can grow outside in San Francisco. And here's the Vanda Cerulean, which is, I don't think it is in situ in that tree. I think it naturalized in that tree, but it was pretty amazing, the number of plants there. And here's Dave Hermeyer's Cattleya Mini Purple Neon, which it certainly is. And Cattleya Intermedia Pine Knot. I'm sure there's a story about that name.
The Penn Valley hybrid.
Pardon?
It's a Penn Valley hybrid, which means that as we, once we've been talking about that Penn Valley is actually probably a natural swarm with lavata, so it's not actually a pure intermedia.
Well, I just was curious about the pine knot.
Yeah, it was the name of a nursery back out east.
Okay. Why? I mean, why was it called that?
I think it was the road on it. Why, I think why certain people use, like John and Bob use Hawkhill because that's where their greenhouse is. Easy name to do. Spouses and where the greenhouse is.
Okay. And then this is Dave's LCCG Roebling Sentinel. The purple lip on the white flower. And that's it for the virtual show. Do we want to go straight into words?
Yeah.
There you are. Why don't you start with yours on the end there?
He's got the camera in a minute.
Okay.
Which one do you want to start on?
He wants to start down here. Okay. Well, this is.
All right, you want to talk about this?
Go ahead.
Oh, you want- okay. I brought this one in. This is Lodogecia Danielle by Anceps. As Mitch was talking about it, the space between the pseudobulbs is kind of large, so it's climbed completely out of the pot. Yeah, It's one of those, yeah, you need to repot it every 3 or 4 years, and it's half a decade behind.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how old is the plant and the other one
I
too.
have no idea. I used to put the date when I repotted it last. This one was repotted in 2017.
Well,
So-
but I meant how long have you had the
I have
plant?
no clue.
Okay.
So it went into that pot in 2017, so it's crawled out of the pot since. Okay, this one
That's 7
here
years.
is Elsie novissima. Helena's Pride and Joy. That's Anceps by Gaskeliana. The snails got to a lot of it, and I carved off a bunch of it over here. I have a hole in the greenhouse roof, and it burnt all the way across the side of the plant. So one side of it got fried. This one here, the tag is here, was repotted in 2016.
So really, so you leave things without repotting them? That's 8 years, right?
Well, see, they normally, these are hanging up really high,
Yeah,
so they like.
so they
doing-
drain well.
Well, they're doing the jungle thing, they're growing around. I did discover what happens if you come up and see there's a hook. That instead of like this, it's like that,
Yeah,
that's when the plant decides it's too big and it falls off of the ceiling, and then that's when it needs to be divided, or. I discovered if you take it, gets the great drainage, and you put it on the bench, it'll rot.
mhm.
So what I did is I put them in, stuff for catering. So this rack is supposed to hold one of those catering trays. But it keeps the plant off the bench so it doesn't rot, so it still thinks it's hanging up, but it's too heavy to hang on the hook anymore, so. It's off the bench, but it still thinks it's up in the air, still gets great circulation. And then, because the trouble is I have several benches full of these, and I just don't have the time to divide them, so they get huge. Some of them have gotten really. Yes, Mitch.
Okay, to answer your question, Bill Weaver's media is the old pseudobulbs. He's growing his own media. That is another way to grow a Cattleya.
Somewhere under all of there is the original plant, but it's layers and layers deep.
Yeah.
Okay, is this one yours as well?
Oh, other than brought these, we brought the Sanofias.
That's Jan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
That's one that didn't go down. Through one, I didn't like it didn't like the way it was fighting.
It's a Tigrina out of the bed, it's like a tag anywhere, it's Tigrina.
Thanks,
Yeah, does smell nice. Do you mind if I invite people to feel it?
No, I don't mind at all.
Because this part down here, you have to touch this part of the plant. See this part here? You will not believe that that is a plant. It feels like plastic and it's slippery. The thing about Stanhope is you don't see them very often because the flower lasts like 3 days. And what she was talking about, they only blow out the bottom of the pot. Which if you put it in a regular pot, you will find no blooms until you go to repot it and you find them coiled around the bottom of the pot. Ooh.
I was hoping to have 6 blooms, but 2 are fading and 2 more coming. That's Reichenbachia.
It has a very interesting scent. They're also very strongly scented. This smells like plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like plastic.
Smell like back to
Plastic,
school shop.
yeah, plastic, back to school shop. I have never seen a Stanhope this white. That is incredible. And again, it blooms out the bottom. So, and most of mine are growing outside in Hampton Bay, and this, they can take,
That's the second blooming of this year, and one earlier in the late spring, I believe.
I have never seen that one before, I love that. Because normally they're dark and spotted, but that pure white is pretty awesome. Your turn.
Yeah.
Is whatever they,
Oh, come on over here. This is Jeff Harris's Lycaste macrophylla hortensis.
Draper, started bullet term.
Oh, there it is. Did you hear that? It's Bubba Film Fascinator. Little one. Yeah. This white one is VLC Harris Island Bride. From Nathan Draper. Nicely grown, beautiful white flowers. Here's a bunch of nice lavender flowers. Andrea Lanatek brought this. It's Cattleya Minerva ceruleum.
Is that Lopez? Andrea Lopez?
No,
Lanatek.
The only UPAT, but
okay, Bill brought some terrestrials. This is Scatterglottis lentifolia, the purple one. And the white one is Havenaria saffron fish, which is protophyllum by cuneiferum.
The interesting part about both of those is they both go dormant.
Yeah,
The Havenaria wants to dry out, which means I've rotted most of the ones I've ever had. The other one, Stenoglottis, dries back to the pot, but it still wants to stay moist. So those, the Stenoglottis grow with my carnivorous plants.
uh,
The Havenaria, that's the first time I had one that lasted more than a year.
yeah, I have never been in.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle Collins brings Residium. Gilded. Something yellow. Residium, gilded. Organ. Okay. Anyway, it's a complex hybrid. Beautiful, nice spidery flowers in the grassy. This is Jeff Harris's, Jeff with a G Harris's Cattleya pratense on color. Yes, Jeff Harris's. It says Pat Glendenion, do you mean Phalaenopsis?
it's Phalaenopsis. So it's already that.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
it says Pat, but
It's definitely not that.
okay, I didn't
Yeah.
think so. All right. So, Glendenion, really pretty. And this other hanging one here is. What? So, now the encroaching process, Brassivola
Subfolia.
subulifera.
Subfolia cordata.
Nice. That's a lot of flowers.
Lot of flowers on that. Jen brought, Dendrobium denudens.
Oh, that's so pretty.
Yeah. So that's the blue. And also from Jan is Thalaphilum blood wrath. Right.
Rage.
Oh, rage, okay.
So Justin Pang brought a five-sided weapon, Joan.
Wow.
So cute.
Joan. There's no way you're gonna see these. And here's another five-sided from Justin, Spinosacchia. Tiny little orange cups.
You find the flowers on this.
There you go.
And Keeper sanguino lenta. Has flowers all around the outside. And here's Jan's Tridonidium, Ergodonianum.
And I have one of those for sale back there.
Okay.
Anybody have them set?
This gorgeous Mazavia is from Vince Pietro. Mazavia, it's Prince Charming. It's an old cross. Jeff Harris brings Vanda which is now a Darwinara apparently, called Charm Blue.
Can I do mine? Verify.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Charm Blue.
This is the Darwinara, well, right now it's the Charm Blue. These two are Wiltonians, these rats. This is Cattleya alba, and this is a Cattleya. These three are bedrooms. This is the little pink one is a pretty lady. And these big yellow and orange ones, these are Pacific, they're from Cal Orchids. The show, they would use them in their displays. The one's like Pacific Amarillo, by the big sun, the yellow ones, and the orange one. This is Pominaria cast whiskers. The first time I got this one. This was across the made this years ago, and I got this from Sarah Hurdell of Need More Orchids. It's ridiculous.
It is so good. I'm so
She'll
jealous.
send you, gonna try has an area, she'll send you them when they're ready to start growing. And then at least it's first year.
And that was Need More Orchids?
Yes.
Okay.
Here's a Dracula, so this is Subotic, and then it's got enough substance that they. So this was covered in flowers, but the 90-degree heat fried most of the leaves and the flowers. And this one survived. Then this is the Mazdaya Tiger Day. Flowers like that.
What kind of Dracula was that?
That's PSUB.
Oh, that one, yeah.
But it's got a lot of substance for a little, a little. Let's see, let's go over here. I have two Overonia. So this is a new, this is a spot, the species. I don't know which one. They're from Andes. And then this is Labras. This is all little red flowers, and I think Page wanted to like maybe the same. Right. And then this is Serrata Stylus Big Landiosa. The flowers bigger than you can plant. You can grow these outside here.
I love Scottish.
I used to grow them year after year, just with ferns. And I think, oh, and then the Vanda, this is fragrant, it smells like marshmallow peeps. It didn't smell like, this is a Cattleya hybrid called Mimi Palmer. That has the bright purple. So.
That's a magnificent alpha. A beautiful woman on that.
My goodness.
The ugliest and great queen.
What did you feed that thing?
You know, like. That is the 1/10 string counter.
I took how long to write too, but it only took like 4 hours.
That's a leafless orchid.
So this is one of the leafless orchids, Microstelia excelsis. And there she is, what? It doesn't, then it's like. Oh.
So I assume you let it out now and then.
Yeah, that stays on the wall in the green.
Ah.
That's Rihanna's Probabellum sonatum,
Wow.
one of those nice dangly ones, I love those. They like it warm and wet, I think, right?
But yeah, pretty warm.
And here's Caitlin Cullen, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Brought in Zygonistia sinister, it must be one of our climbers that Mitch probably knows about. This one,
That's great form. That's like one of the nicest flowers.
Might be one of those crosses. Like Anisha.
that is Mel Maxon brought on Sedusa, Cocoa Peach.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah, lots of flowers.
so many.
Nice spot.
And that time we brought. Does anybody know the name of this?
IDA, GUE, it's I think it's functions.
Looks like.
Great color though. Yeah, the red, they're really common, well out the outdoors.
Okay, you want to start on the bottom there? That's my, Specularia regamians. So that's grown in this cool greenhouse. Just, we don't even need to do that. Until it happens. This is my Oberonia, longissima. As you can see, it's got really long flowers by compared to the size of the plant. And then the other one is the Rodriguez. New Pharaoh Cephala. And it's a little plant with a bunch of little flowers.
Is that Fred Slipper back there?
Fire card.
Oh, yeah. You were gonna bring that. It's got,
That was pretty.
I'm going to bring it.
Did you get everything? Did I miss anything? So.
Nice table.
Oh, I have a question. Could everybody hear? I have a problem with not. People not hearing. Okay.
It's a nice small room. Okay, there's a chance now for everybody to buy. Opportunity tickets. We're gonna take about a 15-minute break to buy plants or buy plants and tickets. And then we're gonna have a rental. I don't think we go home and watch the around.
All right.
Tickets are out here.
Thank you everyone online. See you next month.